The phone was under her gym bag. No lock, no sound. Just a name I wasn't supposed to see. My name is Thomas Grady. I'm 44, been teaching third grade for 16 years. I don't usually go through other people's things, but Emily had left her car unlocked. I was grabbing my jacket from the back seat when the corner of something black caught my eye. The screen lit up with a message notification from Jay. Push the therapy angle. Mention his sleep meds, the grief spiral. Judges hate unpredictability. I didn't move for maybe 30 seconds, just held the phone like it might explode. The next message was worse. He's been seeing Dr. Martinez for 3 years. That's documented instability. Use it. Emily's response was already typed. I feel bad about this part, but you're right. You know what hits hardest? When someone rewrites your pain into their weapon. Scrolled up. Weeks of messages. Planning sessions disguised as casual conversation. My therapy sessions. The ones I'd started after we lost the baby. Dissected like evidence in a trial I didn't know I was facing. Does he still take the Ambien? Sometimes. When the nightmares come back. Perfect. Sleep medication dependency. Write that down. They were building a case against me, using every vulnerable moment I'd shared with my wife as ammunition for something I couldn't yet see clearly. The car door opened. Emily slid into the driver's seat, keys jingling. Hey babe, ready for dinner? I held up the phone. Who's Jay? She didn't even flinch. That's what scared me most. Oh, that. She reached for the phone casually like I'd found her grocery list. Jeremy Lang, he's just a friend from work, helping with some legal strategy. Legal strategy for what? You know, just general advice, nothing important. Nothing important. Right. I handed her the phone. Thanks for being honest. She smiled. Actually smiled. Of course, honey. We don't keep secrets. That night, Emily mentioned my upcoming teacher seminar in Nashville. 3 days of professional development, starting Thursday. You should leave early, she said, folding laundry in our bedroom. Beat the traffic, make a mini vacation out of it. I agreed. Told her I'd leave Wednesday morning instead of Thursday. She seemed pleased. Too pleased. What she didn't know was that I'd already been watching. Not spying, just noticing things that didn't fit. 3 weeks earlier, I'd seen her thumb swipe to a second home screen on her main phone. The app placement was different, deliberate. She'd switch screens too fast, like muscle memory protecting something hidden. I'd filed that moment away. Teachers are good at pattern recognition. Then last week she'd started asking strange questions about my therapy sessions. Casual inquiries that felt rehearsed. Do you talk about the baby much with Dr. Martinez? Does he think you've made progress? Has he ever mentioned how long grief therapy usually takes? I'd answered honestly, because I trusted her. Now I understood why she'd been taking notes. Wednesday morning came. I loaded my car at 6 a.m., kissed Emily goodbye, told her I'd call when I reached Nashville. Drive safe, she said. Love you. I thanked her. She thought I was retreating. I was just leaving the noise. But I didn't drive to Nashville. I drove to a Red Roof Inn 10 minutes from Emily's office building. Paid cash for 3 nights. From my window I could see the parking garage where she worked. Where Jeremy Lang worked. That first day I sat in the inn's lobby with a cup of coffee and a legal pad. Started writing down everything I remembered from those messages. The therapy angle. The sleep medication. The grief spiral. They were planning to paint me as unstable, unfit. But for what? By evening, the picture was clearer. Emily's recent questions, her sudden interest in my schedule, the way she'd started documenting my bad days, custody. They were building a custody case. But we didn't even have kids, not anymore. Then I remembered. Emily's sister had been through a nasty divorce last year, lost primary custody because her ex-husband's lawyer had painted her as emotionally erratic. Were they practicing? Using me as a test case for future reference? Or was there something else I wasn't seeing yet? That night, I called Emily from the motel. "How's Nashville?" she asked. "Educational, learning a lot about strategy." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm proud of you for taking this seriously." I almost laughed. She had no idea how seriously I was taking it. After hanging up, I stared at the ceiling for hours, not sleeping, just thinking. Some people believe silence means surrender, that if you don't fight back immediately, you've already lost. They forget that silence is also patience, and patience is the sharpest tool when you're still listening. I'd been quiet my whole life, in classrooms, in meetings, in moments when louder people assumed my stillness meant I had nothing to contribute. They were about to learn the difference between empty silence and loaded stillness. The next morning, I started making calls. I didn't drive to the seminar. I drove to a motel 10 minutes from her building. The Red Roof Inn had Wi-Fi and a view of Emily's office parking garage. That's all I needed. First priority was confirming who Jay really was. I'd screenshot the messages before handing back the phone, though Emily never thought to check. The metadata told the story. Phone number registered to Jeremy Lang. Corporate directory search showed his full title, Vice President of People and Culture, Meridian Solutions Group. Emily's direct supervisor, her boss. Suddenly, those late meetings made sense. The weekend strategy sessions she'd mentioned. The way she'd started dressing differently for work. Sharper, more deliberate. I sat in that motel room, reading through screenshots until my eyes burned. Every message was another piece of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Push the therapy angle. Judges eat that stuff up. Mention the sleep meds. Make him sound unstable. 3 years of grief counseling? That's not healing. That's dependency. They were taking my worst moments and turning them into legal weapons. The nights I couldn't sleep after losing the baby. The therapy sessions, where I'd finally learned to talk about what happened. All of it repackaged as evidence of my unfitness. But unfitness for what? We didn't have children to fight over. Then I found the answer buried in a message from 2 weeks ago. Once the precedent is set, we can expand the case. Emotional instability, documented mental health issues, medication dependency. It's a template that works. Emily's response: "You really think this will help your other cases?" "Absolutely. Especially the difficult ones. This gives us a playbook. They weren't just targeting me. I was a trial run. A proof of concept for destroying other fathers in custody battles. How many families would they tear apart using my pain as their blueprint?" That's when I called Rachel Klein. I'd taught her son Marcus 5 years ago. Bright kid, but struggling with anger issues after his parents' divorce. Other teachers wanted him expelled after he threw a chair during a meltdown. I'd spent hours after school with Marcus instead, helped him find better ways to express his frustration, convinced the principal that suspension would only make things worse. Marcus graduated with honors last year. Rachel never forgot. "Thomas, is everything okay? I need help with something legal, corporate compliance stuff. Can we meet?" She worked as an HR compliance officer for a different company. Clean reputation, solid understanding of workplace ethics violations. We met at a Starbucks 20 minutes from both our locations, neutral ground. "What's going on?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from me. I showed her the screenshots, explained the situation without emotion, like I was presenting a lesson plan. Rachel's face went pale, then hard. "This is career suicide," she said quietly, "for both of them. Can you help me document it properly?" She was quiet for a long moment, stirring her coffee in small circles. "Yes," she finally said, "but we do this right, legal, airtight." Something in her voice told me this was personal, but I didn't push. Over the next 2 days, we built the case methodically. Rachel knew exactly which forms to file, which agencies to contact, how to structure evidence for maximum impact. We prepared a sealed affidavit for family court, digital exhibits showing the message trail, timestamps proving premeditation. Then we crafted an anonymous whistleblower report to Jeremy's company, workplace ethics violations, personal boundary abuse, misuse of corporate resources for private legal strategy. The anonymity won't last forever, Rachel warned, but it'll give you time to get ahead of any retaliation. How long? Couple weeks, maybe less, if they're smart. That night, Rachel forwarded me some background research she'd done on Jeremy Lang, corporate bio, career history, public records. Most of it was standard executive information. But one document made me stop breathing. A pregnancy benefits denial letter from 2018. The letterhead was from Emily's previous employer. The signature at the bottom, Jeremy Lang, acting HR director. The date was November 2018, the same month we lost the baby. Emily had never mentioned Jeremy's name back then, had never said her benefits claim was denied by someone she knew personally. He was always there. I just never looked back far enough. I called Rachel immediately. "Did you see the benefits letter?" "I saw it," she said. Her voice was different, tighter. "Emily never told me she knew Jeremy from her old job." "Thomas." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "There's something else," she explained carefully. Jeremy Lang had a pattern: young female employees, mentorship that crossed boundaries, complaints that mysteriously disappeared. "How do you know all this?" Another pause, longer this time. "Because I filed one of those complaints 8 years ago. Different company, but same Jeremy Lang." The silence stretched between us. "What happened?" "Nothing. The report was buried. I was transferred to a different department. Jeremy got promoted 6 months later." Now I understood why she'd agreed to help so quickly. This wasn't just about repaying a favor. This was her reckoning too. We worked until 2 a.m. finalizing the documentation. Everything had to be perfect. No room for procedural challenges or technicalities. "Once we filed these," Rachel said, "there's no going back." "I know. Your marriage is over. It was already over. I just didn't know it yet." She nodded, then asked something that surprised me. "Do you have kids?" "We did. Lost a baby 6 years ago." Her expression softened. "I'm sorry." "Thanks. It's why I started therapy. Emily used to say she admired how I was handling the grief. Now she's weaponizing it. Yeah, now she's weaponizing it." "There were 3 chairs at our table once, one for the child that never made it home. She asked me to move it one day, said it was too hard to look at the empty space. I did, but some absences stay louder than noise." The next morning, I was back in the motel room when my phone buzzed. Email notification. Emily's shared laptop was still logged into her work account. She'd forwarded herself an invitation to something called a family engagement workshop. The subject line read, "Improving Work-Life Balance Through Strategic Communication." The host, Jeremy Lang's department. Date, this Friday, 2 days after I was supposed to return from Nashville. She never thought I'd see it, never imagined I'd still be monitoring her digital footprints from 10 minutes away. But there was the invitation, and there was my opportunity. I forwarded the details to Rachel. "Can you get me registered as a guest attendee?" Her response came back within an hour. "Done. You're listed as Thomas Grady, Educational Liaison. Completely legitimate." I stared at the confirmation email for a long time. Jeremy Lang thought he was safe, thought his pattern of manipulation would continue unchallenged. Emily thought I was hundreds of miles away, obliviously attending teacher workshops, while she planned my destruction. They both thought silence meant surrender. They were about to learn otherwise. Friday morning, I put on my best suit, the one I wore to parent-teacher conferences when I needed to look serious. Then I drove to Jeremy's office building and signed in at the front desk. The security guard handed me a visitor badge with a smile. "Welcome to the Family Engagement Workshop, Mr. Grady." "Thank you," I said. "I'm looking forward to it." And I was. They thought silence meant defeat. They forgot silence is the sharpest tool when you're still listening. I returned from my seminar Thursday evening, acting like nothing had changed. Hugged Emily at the door, asked about her week, unpacked my bag in our bedroom. "How was Nashville?" she asked, watching me hang up my conference polo. "Productive. Learned some new classroom management techniques." She seemed relieved. Probably thought I'd spent 3 days in hotel workshops while she finalized her strategy with Jeremy. If only she knew I'd been 10 minutes away the entire time. That weekend, I fell back into routine. Graded papers at the kitchen table. Watched movies with Emily on the couch. Made pancakes Sunday morning like I had for 12 years. But underneath the surface, Rachel and I were coordinating everything. Text messages disguised as casual conversation. Meeting times hidden in requests to borrow teaching supplies. Every detail planned to the minute. Monday morning, Rachel filed the anonymous whistleblower report with Jeremy's company. Workplace ethics violations, misuse of corporate resources, inappropriate relationships with subordinates. Tuesday, our sealed affidavit went to family court. Even though we didn't have children to fight over, the documented conspiracy to manufacture evidence would create a legal record. Wednesday, Rachel submitted a separate report to the State Labor Board. This one included older HR violations Jeremy had buried over the years, including hers. Though her name was redacted, the case details were damning enough. 8 years of silence, she'd told me. Time to break it. Emily's behavior started shifting by Thursday. Her usual confidence seemed strained. She'd check her phone more frequently, type responses faster, delete messages immediately after sending. "Everything okay at work?" I asked during dinner. "Fine, just busy season." But her tone was clipped, distracted. Friday afternoon, Jeremy's ethics investigation officially opened. Rachel had contacts inside his company who kept her informed. "They're moving fast," she texted. "Internal review started this morning." By Monday, the pressure was showing. Emily came home pale, distracted. Barely touched her dinner. "Rough day?" I asked. "Jeremy's dealing with some HR stuff. Nothing serious." Nothing serious. Right. Tuesday brought complications. Rachel called me during my lunch break, voice tight with stress. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "One of the documents I submitted had metadata embedded. It traces back to my work computer, which could eventually trace back to you." My stomach dropped. "How bad?" "Bad enough. If they dig deep enough, they'll figure out the anonymous report wasn't anonymous." "How long do we have?" "Maybe a week. 2 if we're lucky." That evening, Rachel worked late into the night, creating a corporate proxy trail to obscure the document source. Digital breadcrumbs that would lead investigators in circles rather than straight to us. For a moment, the story almost swallowed me too. That's how they win. You blink, they rewrite you. But Rachel was good at her job. By Wednesday morning, she'd built enough plausible deniability to buy us time. The real shift came Thursday morning. Emily's phone buzzed during breakfast. She read the message, then looked up at me with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. "Everything okay?" I asked, buttering my toast. "Yeah, just work stuff." But her hand was shaking slightly as she put the phone down. I found out why that afternoon. Rachel had intercepted communications between Emily and Jeremy. The tone had changed completely. Emily's latest message: "I think we should stop. This feels wrong." Jeremy's response was immediate and brutal. "You're already in too deep. Pull out now and I'll release the full record. The emails, the plan, everything. You're threatening me?" "I'm protecting both of us. We finish what we started, or we both go down." Emily was no longer a willing partner. She was trapped in her own strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jeremy was using the same manipulation tactics on Emily that they'd planned to use against me. Control through documentation, leverage through vulnerability, fear through exposure. How does it feel, Emily, having your trust weaponized against you? Friday brought another development. Jeremy pushed Emily to escalate their custody narrative, despite the obvious problem that we had no children to fight over. We need precedent, his message read. Something on record showing emotional instability. We can build from there. Build to what? Future cases. This is bigger than just practice, Emily. This is a system. A system. They weren't just destroying my reputation for sport. They were creating a template to destroy other fathers systematically. That weekend, Emily barely spoke to me. She'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at her phone, typing and deleting messages repeatedly. Sunday night, she finally tried to talk. Thomas, I need to tell you something. I looked up from my lesson plans. What's on your mind? She struggled for words, started several sentences, stopped, started again. Jeremy and we've been working on something, a legal strategy thing. What kind of strategy? It's complicated, but I think maybe we should stop. Why? It just feels wrong now. I set down my pen, looked at her directly for the first time in weeks. Emily, what exactly have you and Jeremy been working on? She couldn't meet my eyes. Just theoretical stuff? Legal scenarios? Theoretical scenarios about what? About custody cases, hypothetical situations involving who? The silence stretched between us. Us, she finally whispered. Hypothetical cases involving us. I nodded slowly. And these hypothetical cases would prove what exactly? That someone might be considered unstable because of the therapy, the grief, the way you handle stress. I see. But it was just academic, she said quickly. Just exploring possibilities. Academic exploration. With your boss. About my mental health. Yes. Using information I shared with you privately. Thomas, how long has this been going on? A few months, but nothing serious. Just conversation. Nothing serious. There was that phrase again. And Jeremy suggested this approach? He's been through custody battles before. He knows what works. I stood up slowly, closed my lesson plan folder. I think I understand now. Understand what? Why you've been asking about my therapy sessions, why you wanted me to leave early for Nashville, why you've been documenting my bad days. Her face went white. Thomas, please, it's not what you think. What do I think, Emily? I don't know, but you're wrong. I picked up my folder and headed toward the stairs. Where are you going? To bed. I have a busy week ahead. What do you mean? I paused at the bottom of the stairs, looked back at my wife of 12 years. I mean, I have a family engagement workshop to attend. Friday morning, Jeremy's hosting it. The color drained completely from her face. You can't. You're not invited. Actually, I am. Registered as an educational liaison. Completely legitimate. Thomas, don't do this. Do what? Attend a workshop on improving work-life balance? Seems appropriate, don't you think? I climbed the stairs without looking back. Behind me, I heard Emily frantically typing on her phone. Probably warning Jeremy. Probably panicking. Probably realizing that their theoretical custody case was about to become very real. But Jeremy wouldn't be able to help her now. The ethics investigation was closing in. The labor board was asking questions. The corporate proxy trail Rachel had built was working perfectly. By Friday morning, Jeremy would have bigger problems than one unexpected workshop attendee. They'd thought silence meant I was broken. Thought my grief made me weak. Thought my therapy proved instability. They were about to learn the difference between broken and careful. Between weak and patient. Between unstable and prepared. Jeremy was mid-slide when I walked in. He blinked, then froze. The conference room held maybe 40 people, corporate types and business casual, notebooks open, coffee cups steaming. A typical Friday morning workshop. Jeremy stood at the front with a PowerPoint behind him. The slide read, Transparency and Leadership. Building trust through open communication. The irony was perfect. I signed in at the registration table, clipped my visitor badge to my jacket, and found a seat in the back row, close enough to be seen, far enough to avoid disruption. Jeremy's eyes found mine immediately. His presentation stumbled. So, transparency requires... He glanced at his notes, then back at me. Requires honest dialogue between all stakeholders. His voice had lost its confident rhythm. The polished executive demeanor cracked slightly. Are there any questions about building trust? He asked, though he'd barely covered the topic. A woman in the front row raised her hand. Could you elaborate on accountability measures? Jeremy stared at her for a moment too long. Accountability, yes. That's essential. He clicked to the next slide, but his hands were shaking now. The PowerPoint remote slipped from his fingers, clattered to the floor. Excuse me, he said, bending to retrieve it. Technical difficulties. But when he straightened up, his face had gone pale. Someone had entered the room. A woman in a gray suit stood near the door. Corporate ID badge, serious expression. She made eye contact with Jeremy and gestured toward the hallway. I apologize, Jeremy announced to the room. We need to take a brief break. Please help yourselves to refreshments. He walked toward the woman, his stride carefully controlled. Professional. But I caught the tension in his shoulders. They stepped into the hallway together. Through the glass wall, I watched their conversation. Brief. Decisive. Final. Jeremy never came back. Neither did the illusion. A younger man appeared 10 minutes later, introduced himself as the department's assistant director, and continued the workshop with someone else's slides. Jeremy had an urgent matter to attend to, he explained smoothly, but will ensure you get the full value of today's session. I stayed for the entire workshop, took notes, asked thoughtful questions about work-life balance, played the role of engaged educational liaison perfectly. When it ended, I shook hands with several attendees, exchanged business cards, thanked the assistant director for his time. Please give Jeremy my regards, I said. Tell him Thomas Grady appreciated the invitation. The man's smile faltered slightly. Of course, I'll pass that along. I drove home in silence. No music. No phone calls, just the steady rhythm of tires on asphalt and the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. Emily was waiting in the kitchen when I arrived. Her face was puffy, eyes red-rimmed. How was your day? I asked, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. Jeremy's been suspended pending investigation. That's unfortunate. Thomas, we need to talk. About what? About everything. About what I did, about the messages. I poured myself a glass of water from the tap. What about them? I'm sorry, I was wrong. Jeremy convinced me it was just theoretical, but I know that's not true anymore. What changed your mind? The investigation started before today. Someone reported him for ethics violations, multiple complaints going back years. I nodded. Sounds serious. He told me today that everything we discussed is documented, that if the investigation expands, they'll find all our messages. And that worries you? Of course it worries me. I could lose my job, my reputation, everything. I see. She was crying now. Real tears, not manipulative ones. I never meant for it to go this far. Jeremy said it was just practice. Just exploring legal strategies in case we ever needed them. In case we ever needed strategies to prove I was unstable. Yes. No. I don't know anymore. The next week brought documents I hadn't expected. Emily's lawyer sent revised proposals to my lawyer, shared custody arrangements, 50-50 splits, but we didn't have children to split custody of. Then I understood. They'd filed preliminary paperwork months ago, hypothetical custody arrangements that became real legal documents once someone started asking questions. The court had reviewed our sealed evidence, the messages, the conspiracy, the manufactured case against my mental health. Their decision was swift and decisive. Sole custody claim rejected. Primary custody granted to Thomas Grady for weekday placement due to demonstrated emotional stability and lack of misconduct. Weekend custody, shared arrangement pending further review. The judge's notes were particularly satisfying. What some call silence, others call self-control. This father never reacted impulsively to provocation. He protected his interests through proper legal channels. This court finds no evidence of the instability alleged by the petitioner. Emily's theoretical custody case had backfired completely. The very evidence they'd planned to use against me proved my stability instead. But the biggest revelation came from Rachel 2 weeks later. She forwarded me a redacted version of Jeremy's internal investigation report. "Thought you wouldn't want to see this," her message read. The document outlined a pattern of behavior spanning 8 years, multiple complaints, inappropriate relationships, harassment allegations, all buried or dismissed without proper investigation. I was reading through the timeline when I spotted something that made me stop breathing. Page 47. A complaint filed in 2016. The victim's name was redacted, but the case details were specific. Employee reported unwanted advances in professional retaliation. Complaint dismissed without merit by department supervisor. Employee transferred to different division following settlement agreement. The settlement date was November 2016. The same month Rachel had left her previous job. The department supervisor who dismissed the complaint, Jeremy Lang. I called her immediately. "Rachel, I need to ask you something." "What's up?" "The complaint you filed 8 years ago, was it November 2016? Silence on the other end. "Rachel, how did you find out?" "Jeremy's investigation report. Your case is in there. Redacted, but the details match." "I never told you it was at the same company." "Because you thought I'd connect the dots?" "Because I thought you'd think I was only helping you for revenge." "Were you?" Another pause. Longer this time. "At first, maybe. But watching what they did to you, what they were planning to do to other families, it became bigger than my old grudge." "You never said a word about it all these years." Her silence wasn't just loyalty. It was survival. "What do you mean?" "Jeremy didn't just bury my complaint. He made sure I understood the consequences of pushing back. My reputation, my career, my son's stability. So you stayed quiet. I stayed smart, until I met someone else who understood how silence can be a weapon instead of a surrender. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer and looked at the empty chair where Emily used to sit, where she'd planned my destruction while pretending to support my healing. The neighborhood was quiet. Kids playing in distant yards, dogs barking. Life continuing normally while my world reconstructed itself piece by piece. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "This is Jeremy. We need to talk." I deleted it without responding. Some conversations aren't worth having. Some people aren't worth the breath it takes to tell them no. Tomorrow I'd start the real work of rebuilding. Tonight, I'd just sit in the silence and appreciate how good it felt to finally use it as a tool instead of a hiding place. I dropped the phone into a recycling bin, SIM card removed, screen unbroken. The second phone Emily had hidden under her gym bag, the one that started everything. I'd kept it as evidence until the court case closed. Now it was just plastic and glass. No power left to hurt anyone. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a few weekend shoppers. I walked back to my Honda without looking over my shoulder. No speech. No need for final words. 2 months had passed since Jeremy's termination, since Emily moved out and into a downtown apartment, since the divorce settlement split everything cleanly down the middle. The house stayed mine. She kept her car and half the savings. No drama, no drawn-out battles. She'd tried calling twice. Left voicemails explaining how Jeremy had manipulated her, how she'd lost sight of what was right, how sorry she was. I'd listened to them both. Deleted them both. Some betrayals don't require forgiveness, just distance. That evening, Rachel stopped by to drop off the final legal documents. Everything officially closed, sealed, finished. "How does it feel?" she asked, settling into the kitchen chair across from me. "Quiet," I said. "Good quiet." She smiled. "I know what you mean. Any word on Jeremy's situation?" "Officially terminated. Unofficially blacklisted from HR positions anywhere in the city." She paused. "Turns out we weren't the only ones watching his pattern." "Other complaints?" 3 more women came forward after the investigation went public, all from different companies over the past decade. I nodded. Sometimes breaking one silence gives others permission to break theirs. "Thank you," I said, "for everything. Thank you for reminding me that silence can be strategic instead of just survival." After Rachel left, I sat on the front porch as the sun set behind the maple trees. Same house, same neighborhood, same quiet street. But the silence felt different now. Not empty or defensive, just peaceful. My neighbor's daughter Katie ran across the street, her mother Linda following with 2 bottles of lemonade. "Mr. Grady," Katie called, bouncing onto the porch steps. "Can we sit with you?" "Of course." Katie was 8. Bright kid, reminded me of students I'd taught who carried old sadness, but never let it stop them from learning new things. She swung her legs from the porch step, looking at me with curious eyes. "Do we still have 3 chairs at the table?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her, confused. "What table?" "The one inside. I remember when I was little you always had 3 chairs around your kitchen table. Now there's only 2. Smart kid, observant like her mother. "No," I said. "But there's still room." Katie nodded, like that made perfect sense. "Room for what?" "Whatever comes next." We sat in comfortable silence as streetlights flickered on. Katie chased fireflies while Linda and I talked about normal things. School district changes, neighborhood news, everyday conversations between everyday neighbors. The kind of normal I'd forgotten was possible. Later, after they went home, I walked through the quiet house, turning off lights. In the kitchen junk drawer, I found an old family calendar. 20162024. 8 years of appointments, anniversaries, reminders of a life that no longer existed. I folded it carefully and placed it in a storage box labeled the same years. Closed it without locking. Then I turned off the lights and headed upstairs. Tomorrow would bring new lesson plans, new students, new possibilities. Tonight, the silence was enough. Postscript info. Following the investigation, Jeremy Lang was terminated and subsequently faced a class action lawsuit involving 7 additional victims, spanning 12 years. The case resulted in policy changes across multiple corporations and formal compensation for all affected parties. Rachel Klein received recognition for her role in exposing the systematic harassment pattern. Emily Grady relocated and changed careers. She has not contacted Thomas since the divorce was finalized.